Like you ever travel anyway, Holly? Stop being so dramatic about this whole situation right now. My mother's laughter, sharp and dismissive, cut through me, echoing through the phone the way it had for all 33 years of my life. In my small Des Moines apartment, I sat staring at the credit card statement that had just landed in my email inbox. $12,700. A luxury Caribbean cruise for my sister Brittany, charged to my account without a single word of warning or permission from anyone in my family. My name is Holly, and I'd spent my entire adult life as the responsible one. The one who worked 2 jobs through college while my younger sister Brittany got her tuition paid in full by our parents. The one who saved every penny, while my parents praised Brittany for her expensive taste and sophisticated lifestyle. The one who bought a house at 29, only to let my parents move in rent-free when my father claimed his retirement savings had been wiped out by bad investments. Mom, you used my credit card without asking me first, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That's $12,000 I don't have sitting in my account right now. Oh please, she scoffed loudly into the phone. You make good money at that accounting firm. And Brittany deserved this trip after everything she's been through with her divorce. Besides, we're your parents. What's yours is ours. Isn't that how family is supposed to work? I closed my eyes, the familiar weight of exhaustion settling over me heavily. Everything Brittany went through with her divorce. Her divorce from a man she cheated on repeatedly. Her inability to hold a job for more than 6 months. Her constant need for financial rescuing that somehow always fell on my shoulders alone. When were you planning to tell me about this charge? I asked. We're telling you now, aren't we? She said. The cruise leaves in 3 days. Brittany's so excited already. Your father and I are going too. Someone needs to keep her company. We thought it would be a nice family vacation for us all to enjoy together. A family vacation. One I was paying for entirely but wasn't even invited to. You're all going on this cruise on my credit card without asking. Holly, don't start with that tone, she snapped. Your father's back has been bothering him terribly, and we never get to do anything nice as a family. You should be happy for us. Besides, you're always too busy with work to travel anyway. The points will be good for your credit score, or whatever it is you care so much about. That was when something inside me shifted, permanently and completely. It wasn't exactly anger. It was something colder, more calculated. A clarity that had been building for years, finally crystallizing into something I could hold on to tightly. You're right, Mom, I said, my voice suddenly calm and perfectly steady. I hope you all have a wonderful time on the cruise. Enjoy the trip. A long pause followed on the other end. My mother wasn't used to me giving in so easily. Usually, there'd be an argument, followed by guilt-tripping from her, followed by my eventual capitulation and apology. Well, that's more like it, she said, confusion evident in her voice. I knew you'd understand once you thought about it rationally. Family has to support each other. Absolutely, I agreed pleasantly. Family has to support each other. After I hung up, I sat in complete silence for a very long time. My rented apartment was small and modest, a 1-bedroom I'd moved into after letting my parents take over my house. My house, the one I'd saved for years to afford, the one I'd planned to start my own family in someday. The one my parents had lived in rent-free for 4 years while I paid the mortgage, taxes, insurance, and utilities from this cramped place across town. They'd promised it would be temporary. 6 months, maybe a year, until my father got back on his feet. But months turned into years, and every time I brought up them finding their own place, my mother would remind me of everything they'd sacrificed raising me. My father would clutch his back dramatically, and I'd feel guilty enough to let it go. But this was different. This wasn't an unexpected bill or help with groceries. This was taking $12,700 without permission and laughing about it. This was booking a luxury vacation while treating my money like it was theirs to spend. No, not this time. For the first time in my life, I was going to stop being the family doormat. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I needed time to think, to plan. I made strong coffee and sat at my small kitchen table, letting the memories wash over me like a tide I'd been holding back for decades. Growing up, I'd always known I was the less favored child. Brittany was 2 years younger, blonde and beautiful, where I was plain and practical. She had our mother's charm and our father's blue eyes. I had my grandmother's sturdy build and unremarkable brown hair. From the time she learned to walk, Brittany was the constant center of attention. I remembered the year I made the honor roll in elementary school. I'd rushed home with my report card expecting praise. Instead, I found my parents cooing over Brittany's participation trophy from a dance recital. "That's nice, Holly," my mother had said without looking. "Put it on the fridge if you want." I remembered saving my allowance for months to buy my first bicycle, only to have it given to Brittany when she threw a tantrum. "You're the older sister," my father had explained. "You need to set a good example of sharing." I remembered working 30 hours a week in high school to save for college while Brittany went on shopping sprees with the emergency credit card our parents gave her. I remembered graduating with honors and a mountain of student debt, while they took out loans to send Brittany to a private university because a state school wasn't good enough. And I remembered the day 4 years ago when my father called me crying. They'd lost everything. Their retirement savings wiped out by a fraudulent investment scheme, facing foreclosure. I had just closed on my own home, a modest 3-bedroom that represented years of sacrifice. Without hesitation, I offered to let them stay with me. "Just for a little while," my mother had said, already directing movers where to put her furniture in my house. "We'll be out of your hair before you know it." But they never left. Slowly, my home became theirs. My furniture was moved to the garage. My decorations were replaced with family photos featuring far more pictures of Brittany than of me. My spare bedroom became my father's man cave. My home office became my mother's craft room. When I started dating someone seriously, my mother made it clear bringing him to the house would be inappropriate. "We're your parents, Holly. We shouldn't have to deal with your romantic entanglements under our roof." So, I found this small apartment and let them have the house completely, still paying every bill while they contributed nothing. The relationship didn't last. My boyfriend couldn't understand why I let my family walk all over me, and I couldn't explain it. It was just how things had always been. Holly sacrifices. Holly provides. Holly asks for nothing and expects less. But now, sitting in my cramped apartment and staring at that $12,700 charge, I finally understood what I'd been refusing to see. My family didn't love me. They loved what I could do for them. They loved my reliability, my guilt, my endless willingness to put their needs before my own. But me as a person with my own needs? I was invisible to them except when they needed something. I thought about calling my best friend, Fiona, but I already knew what she'd say. She'd been telling me for years my family was toxic, that I needed boundaries, that I was worth more. I'd always made excuses, justified their behavior, convinced myself things would change if I just tried harder to please them. Well, I was done trying to please them. I was done being the family ATM. I was done pretending this was what love looked like. I picked up my phone and called the real estate agent I'd found online. Her name was Denise, and she answered on the second ring. "I have a house I need to sell quickly," I told her. "It's occupied, but I'm the sole owner. How fast can we do this?" The walkthrough happened 2 days later while my parents and Brittany were busy packing for their cruise. I told them I was stopping by to check on the water heater. They barely acknowledged me as I walked through with Denise, pointing out features and noting the condition of rooms. It was surreal seeing my home through a professional's eyes. The house was in excellent condition, thanks to the maintenance I'd kept paying for. My parents had kept it clean at least. They may have taken over my space, but they hadn't let it fall apart. "This is a beautiful property," Denise said as we stood in the backyard. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, updated kitchen, finished basement. "In this market, we could list it for significantly more than you paid. You've got a lot of equity here." Equity my parents had benefited from while I scraped by in a rental. Equity they probably assumed they'd inherit someday, expecting me to leave it to Brittany since she needed it more. "List it," I said firmly. "Whatever price you think is fair. I want it sold before my tenants return from their vacation." Denise nodded. "I'll have the listing up by tomorrow. I have investors who might be interested in a quick cash purchase. No guarantees, but I'll make calls." True to her word, Denise had the house listed within 24 hours. By then, my family was on their way to the port, sending me excited pictures without a single word of thanks. My mother texted a photo of their luxurious cabin with a private balcony. "Wish you were here," she wrote. followed by laughing emojis that made her insincerity perfectly clear. I didn't respond. Instead, I watched as inquiries about the house started coming in. Denise was right about the market. Within 3 days, we had multiple offers, including 2 cash buyers who could close within a week. I accepted the highest offer. A cash purchase from a young married couple, Jonathan and Claire, eager to start their new life. They seemed genuinely excited about the house, talking about a nursery and a garden. It felt right knowing my home would go to people who would actually appreciate it. The closing was scheduled for the day before my parents were due back. I signed all the papers with a steady hand. The proceeds were deposited into my account, minus fees and the mortgage balance. When everything settled, I had a substantial sum, more than enough to pay off the credit card charge and start fresh. But first, I had one more thing to do. I called my credit card company and reported the charges as fraudulent. I explained someone had used my card without authorization to book a cruise. They opened an investigation immediately and issued a temporary credit. My mother's name was on the booking, which would make it straightforward. Then I went online and booked myself a cruise. Not the same one, but a different line, a different destination. A solo adventure to Alaska, departing the day after my parents returned. I used the points and cash back from their unauthorized purchase. Poetic justice. For the first time in years, I felt something like hope. I was finally choosing myself. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about survival. About recognizing I deserved better. The new owners would take possession the night before my parents returned. I'd arranged for my few remaining belongings to be removed. My parents would come back from their stolen vacation to find strangers living in what they thought was their home. And I would be gone, sailing toward a new life. As I packed my suitcase, I thought about the phone calls that would come. The accusations, the tears, the guilt trips. But for the first time, I felt no anxiety. Just relief. This time, I wasn't going to answer. This time, I'd let the calls pile up while I watched the northern lights from a ship's deck. My phone buzzed with a text from Brittany. Having the best time ever. Thanks for making this possible, sis. I stared at it, then put my phone face down. They had no idea what was coming. And even if they had, I doubted they would have changed a thing. Some people never learn until consequences force them to face reality. My family was about to get one hell of a lesson. The day the new owners moved in was a Thursday. Their ship was due to dock Friday morning. They'd be home by early afternoon. The timing was perfect. I met Jonathan and Claire at a coffee shop near the property that morning. They were in their late 20s, glowing with newlywed joy. Jonathan was an engineer. Claire was a nurse. They seemed like good people who would build a happy life in that house. "We can't thank you enough for the quick closing," Claire said warmly. "We've been living with Jonathan's parents, saving for a down payment. We never expected to find something so perfect so fast. The house has good energy," I told them sincerely. I handed over the keys and wished them well, feeling a mix of sadness and liberation. That house had represented so much of my hard work and dreams, but those dreams had been corrupted. Now it would be a home for people who genuinely loved each other. That evening I finished packing. My flight to Seattle left early the next morning. The ship would depart Saturday afternoon. I'd booked a balcony cabin, splurging on an upgrade I'd never have considered before. This trip was about proving to myself I was worth the investment. I went to bed early, setting my alarm for 5 a.m. As I lay in the dark, I imagined tomorrow. My parents arriving home exhausted, my father searching for his key, the confusion when it didn't work, the growing panic. A good daughter would feel guilty. I felt free. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Last night on the ship. Brittany is crying because she doesn't want to leave. This has been the best vacation of our lives. You really should have come, Holly." I read it 3 times, marveling at the lack of self-awareness. They'd stolen $12,700 from me, taken a vacation I wasn't invited to, and she still thought she could guilt me. I didn't respond. I turned off my phone and closed my eyes. Tomorrow would be a new day. The beginning of the rest of my life. The alarm woke me at 5. I was at the airport by 7. The flight was uneventful. I arrived at the cruise terminal with hours to spare. The ship was massive, gleaming white against the gray Pacific sky. I felt a flutter of excitement as I walked up the gangway. My cabin was nicer than I'd expected. The balcony faced the open ocean. I unpacked, then stepped out to breathe in the salt air. This was really happening. I was on a cruise ship sailing toward Alaska while my family returned home to discover the life they'd taken for granted was gone. Curiosity got the better of me as the ship pulled away from the dock. I powered on my phone. Notifications flooded in. 29 missed calls, 15 voicemails, 47 text messages. The first voicemail from my mother around 2 p.m. Holly, something strange is happening. There are people in the house. They say they own it. This must be a mistake. Call me immediately. The second from my father an hour later. Holly, this isn't funny. The police came. They said we have to leave. Where are we supposed to go? Call us. The third from Brittany panicked. Holly, what did you do? Mom and Dad are freaking out. You can't just sell the house without telling them. This is insane. Call me. I listened to a few more, tracing their desperation. Confusion, panic, anger, fear. By the 10th message, my mother was crying, demanding to know how I could do this to my family. But manipulation only works if the target still cares about the manipulator's approval. After 33 years of being taken for granted, dismissed, and exploited, I had finally stopped caring. I deleted the voicemails. I turned my phone off and went to dinner. The dining room was spectacular. Gleaming chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the ocean. I was seated alone, but I didn't feel lonely. I felt peace. I ordered salmon and a glass of expensive wine. I was done denying myself simple pleasures. As I ate, I wondered where my family was. It was evening in Des Moines. They'd been homeless for about 8 hours. A hotel? A friend's spare room? Part of me wondered if I should feel bad. They were my parents. Didn't I owe them something? Then I remembered the $12,700. The years of paying their bills. Every ignored accomplishment, every sacrifice taken for granted. Every moment I was made to feel I didn't matter. No, I didn't owe them anything. I paid my debt 1,000 times over. It was time for them to face the consequences of their own choices. The next morning, I woke to the Alaska coastline. We were cruising through the Inside Passage, surrounded by snow-capped mountains and dense evergreen forests. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I spent the day on deck, bundled up, watching for whales and eagles. That afternoon, as we approached our first port, I turned my phone on again. Notifications had piled up, though more slowly. The most recent voicemail was from my father, left around midnight. His voice was tired, defeated. Holly, I don't understand why you did this. We're at a motel. The emergency credit card you gave us got declined, so we used our own money. Your mother is in pieces. Brittany is hysterical. We thought we were coming home, and instead we found strangers in our house. How could you do this? Please call. We need to talk. Our house. He still called it that. Even now, facing consequences, they couldn't see the truth. I typed out a text carefully. The house belonged to me. You lived there free while I paid all the bills. You stole $12,700 from me for a vacation I wasn't invited to. You treated me like an ATM for 33 years. I'm done. Don't contact me again. I sent it and blocked all 3 of their numbers. Then I blocked their emails and unfriended them on social media, severing every digital tether. When I was done, I felt lighter. The weight of their expectations, demands, constant disappointment gone. The ship docked at a small fishing village. I joined a shore excursion to a glacier, hiking through pristine wilderness to stand at the base of an ancient river of ice. The guide explained how glaciers form, move, melt, and retreat. A lesson in impermanence. As I stared up at the massive wall of blue-white ice, I thought about the person I used to be. The doormat, the people-pleaser, the invisible sister. That version of Holly was melting away now. In her place, something new was emerging. I didn't know yet who I'd become, but for the first time I was excited to find out. The cruise continued for 5 more glorious days. We visited Juneau and Ketchikan, sailed past Hubbard Glacier, and watched the northern lights dance across the sky. I talked to strangers, tried new foods, went ziplining, ate fresh king crab, bought expensive native art. And through it all, I didn't think much about my family. They were a fading memory of a life I was leaving behind. For the first time in decades, I was living entirely in the present. On the last night, I sat on my balcony with champagne, watching stars emerge over the darkening sea. We'd arrive in Seattle tomorrow. I needed to figure out what came next. I had money from the house sale, enough to start over somewhere new. The possibilities were endless, terrifying, wonderful. I'd unblocked my family's numbers out of curiosity. They were still trying. The calls had continued, less frequent. The voicemails shorter, more desperate. The texts had evolved from demands to pleas. Holly, please. We need to talk. I know we weren't perfect, but this is too much. Where are we supposed to live? You can't just abandon us. Mom won't stop crying. Are you happy now? That last one was from Brittany. It made me laugh out loud. My sister, who'd never worked a full day, who'd always been handed everything, was trying to make me feel guilty about our mother's tears. The irony was perfect. I didn't respond. What was the point? They weren't interested in understanding what they'd done wrong. They just wanted me to fix things, to go back to being reliable Holly who cleaned up their messes. That Holly didn't exist anymore. The next morning, I disembarked and went to the airport. With hours before my flight back to Des Moines, I stopped at a coffee shop and pulled out my laptop. It was time to plan the next chapter. I decided not to return to my apartment. The lease was up. There was nothing keeping me in Iowa. My accounting job was fine, but I'd never loved it. I'd taken it because it was stable, because it let me support my family. I was done making responsible choices that only benefited others. I started researching cities, Portland, Denver, Asheville, places with mountains and culture and energy. By the time my flight was called, I'd narrowed it to 3. The flight was long. I thought about my parents stranded without their safety net. Brittany facing consequences for the first time. All the years I'd spent being invisible, used, taken for granted. And I thought about the future. My future. One where I mattered, where my needs counted, where I didn't have to sacrifice everything to keep others comfortable. When I landed, I didn't go home. I checked into a hotel near the airport and slept for 12 hours straight. The next week, I wrapped up my life in Iowa. I gave notice at my job, packed up my apartment, donating most things and shipping essentials to my new destination. I'd chosen Denver, drawn by the mountains and sunshine and the promise of a fresh start. Throughout it all, the calls and messages continued. They found my hotel and showed up once, but I had the front desk say I wasn't available. I watched from my window as my mother paced the parking lot, phone pressed to her ear, leaving another voicemail I'd never hear. Part of me wanted to confront them, to explain. But I knew it would be pointless. They'd never accept responsibility. They'd only make themselves the victims and try to guilt me into fixing it. So I stayed silent. I let my absence speak. When the moving truck pulled away from my empty apartment, carrying everything I owned toward a new life, I didn't look back. Denver welcomed me with open arms and sunshine. I found an apartment in a neighborhood full of coffee shops and bookstores, the kind of place I'd always dreamed of but never thought I deserved. The mountains were visible from my bedroom window. Starting over at 33 was harder than I expected, but more rewarding. I found a new job at a financial consulting firm where my experience was actually appreciated. Colleagues invited me to happy hours and hikes, treating me like an equal. I made real friends, people who liked me for who I was, not what I could do for them. Months passed. The calls from my family slowed to a trickle. Occasionally, a message from an unknown number would come through, but I never answered. Eventually, even those stopped. I learned through a distant cousin that my parents had moved in with Brittany, who'd reluctantly taken them in after the motel became too expensive. The arrangement wasn't going well. Brittany's small apartment was cramped. My parents complained constantly. Everyone blamed everyone else. The golden child was finally experiencing what it felt like to be responsible for our parents, and she wasn't handling it gracefully. The credit card company completed their investigation in my favor. The charges were fraudulent, made without my authorization. My family was now responsible for repaying the debt. I had no idea how they were managing, and honestly, I didn't care. It was no longer my problem. I started therapy in my second month in Denver. My therapist helped me understand the family dynamics, the roles we'd been assigned, and the courage it took to break free. She validated my feelings, telling me I wasn't selfish for wanting respect. I was just human. Healing was slow and sometimes painful. There were moments of doubt, when guilt whispered I should have found a better way. But those moments became fewer as I built my new life, surrounded by people who actually valued me. About 8 months after my move, I had an unexpected visitor. I opened my door to find Brittany standing there, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen her. "Holly," she said, her voice cracking. "We need to talk." I stared at her, taking in the dark circles under her eyes, the nervous way she clutched her purse. This wasn't the confident, entitled sister I remembered. This was someone broken down by the weight of her own choices. "How did you find me?" I asked, not letting her in. "I hired a private investigator. Please, Holly, just give me 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. She looked around my cozy living room. The art, the plants, the evidence of a life well lived. Envy flickered in her eyes. "Nice place," she said quietly. "You seem like you're doing well." "I am," I replied, not offering a seat. "What do you want, Brittany?" She took a deep breath. "I came to apologize." I waited, saying nothing. "Not because I think it will change anything," she continued, voice trembling. "I know you're not going to forgive me. I don't blame you. But I needed you to know that I finally understand what we did to you. Living with Mom and Dad these past months has been a nightmare. They treat me the way they always treated you. Nothing I do is good enough. Everything is my fault. I realize this is what your entire life was like." A complicated mixture of vindication and sorrow twisted in my chest. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? For them to see the truth. But hearing it from Brittany didn't feel as satisfying as I'd imagined. "They blame you for everything," she said. "They say you ruined their lives, that you're heartless. But the truth is, they don't want to admit what they did wrong. They never will. And I was the same way for too long." "What changed?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Living with them," Brittany laughed bitterly. "Seeing how they operate up close. They take everything and give nothing. They criticize constantly. They expect you to sacrifice your entire existence for their comfort." Sound familiar? It did. It sounded exactly like my entire life up until a year ago. "I'm not asking you to let me back into your life," Brittany said. "I know I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. And I'm sorry." We stood in silence, two sisters separated by years of resentment and inequality. I could see she was genuine. Something in her had shifted. But one apology couldn't undo decades of damage. "Thank you for saying that," I finally said. "It means something, even if it doesn't change anything." Brittany nodded, tears streaming. "What do I do now?" "You do what I did," I told her. "You leave. You build your own life. You stop letting them control you. They're adults who made their own choices, just like we have to make ours." She looked at me for a long moment. Understanding, maybe. Resignation. Then she wiped her eyes and turned to the door. "Goodbye, Holly." "Goodbye, Brittany." I watched her walk down the hallway, and I felt a strange sense of closure. That night I sat on my balcony, looking at the mountains, thinking about everything that had led me here. The years of invisibility, the credit card charge that broke me, the house sale that set me free, Brittany's unexpected apology. I didn't know what would happen next. Maybe nothing. Maybe she'd find her own strength and escape. Or maybe she'd fall back into old patterns. Either way, it was no longer my responsibility to save her. In the months that followed, I heard occasional updates through the family grapevine. My parents eventually found a small apartment they could afford, though it was nothing like the house. My father's back worsened. He used a cane now. My mother worked part-time at a grocery store, something she'd always considered beneath her. 1 year after the cruise that changed everything, I received a letter from my mother. A long handwritten message full of grievances, accusations, pleas for reconciliation. She blamed me for destroying the family, for being heartless, for caring more about money than my parents. She claimed everything they'd done was out of love, that I'd misunderstood, that I owed them an apology. I read it once, then put it through the shredder. Some things aren't worth responding to. As for me, I continued building the life I'd always wanted. I got promoted. Started a side business doing financial coaching for young professionals. Adopted a cat who curled up next to me every night. I traveled to places I'd always dreamed of, no longer waiting for permission or feeling guilty about spending money on myself. My parents never truly recovered. The credit card debt followed them for years, a constant reminder of the cruise that cost them everything. Without my income to subsidize their lifestyle, They were forced to live within their means for the first time in decades. My father's health declined. My mother grew increasingly bitter and isolated as friends tired of her complaints about her ungrateful daughter. Brittany eventually moved across the country to escape them. Whether she ever truly broke free from the family patterns remained unclear. The comfortable retirement they'd envisioned, funded by my endless sacrifice, had vanished the moment I stopped playing the role they'd assigned me. Standing on my balcony on the anniversary of that cruise, watching the sunset behind the Rockies, I thought about the journey that brought me here. The anger had faded, replaced by something quieter and more peaceful. I'd wanted justice and I'd gotten it. But the real victory wasn't in watching my family suffer consequences. The real victory was standing here in my own apartment, in my own city, living my own life on my own terms. Looking back, I realized selling the house hadn't been about revenge. It had been about survival, about finally choosing myself after 33 years of being taught my needs didn't matter. The peace I felt now wasn't from watching my family struggle. It was from finally closing the door on the version of myself who tolerated being treated like she was worthless.